Okay, so I'd like to introduce Johnny Vedmore from johnnyvedmore.com and Newspaste, and I think it's Newshound now as well as the podcast. One's being on there, which is great. Thanks for coming on and talking, Johnny, and I think we can continue talking about some of the wonderful topics we've even begun to chat about, which I'm very curious.
Yeah, man. I'm very happy to be here and talk to you and talk to someone who I consider we've known each other now for it's been about I know a couple of years, possibly a year and a half, two
At least a
years
year
or
and a half,
something.
something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. And we're very like-minded in many different ways. So that's good. That's good. I like a bit of that.
Yeah, yeah. And we might be able to. I was actually thinking about doing something interesting, which was potentially you talking through your research, and potentially I can visualize in real time the networks between different things, but not necessarily now. But we'll see if we get into things I can actually start to do that, because I can do this fairly quickly, which is actually interesting.
You can put me in whatever direction you want, and I'll try and keep up. But who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's more actually to just visualize things because that's my kind of expertise. You have an immense knowledge on what's going on behind the scenes, and we were just actually talking about Peter Thiel. So I'm very, very curious to the interlying web between Thiel, because obviously you can start at any point in time with any individual, and then who knows who. But I'm curious, like, because we were busy talking about it before, like, what is your thoughts on him as an origin, actually? So when did he start becoming dodgy? This is going to be my starting question for like every individual, because
You
at
know,
some age he was a baby and didn't understand what he was doing.
yeah, I think Peter Thiel's always been a little bit different mentally than the people around him. He seems to live in a world where he uses option C when there's only two options available.
Interesting.
He's the type of guy who looks for the other way. He's very clever. I find him like a wizard of logical fallacies. He'll instead of there just being one logical fallacy with what he does, he kind of puts two or three logical fallacies together and presents them in a trick like David Blaine, like a logical mental trick. And I mean, he was I think at Stanford, and he was writing for the paper there for a while as well. And I get a feeling that the people who did that for when I did research, and it was years ago that I did that sort of research on Peter Thiel. I never wrote anything about Peter Thiel particularly. I've written about people who are connected with him in all different ways, and his name keeps coming up. And in a
Hmm.
sense, I've been putting off the investigation into Peter Thiel. When did he become evil? Like, I think,
That's my favorite question for everybody.
yeah, I think that for Peter Thiel, I think to be that evil, you have to have been born that way. So you have to have been born in a way where the way you use your brain leads you to always try and choose the evil option. Evil options C from binary choice. And he's been progressing for the past 20 years, 25 years upwards because he got lots of money early on. I think the whole PayPal X thing around the late 90s, early noughties, you had him and Elon Musk and others creating these platforms. And I think those were like with D. Shaw and Jeff Bezos and Halsey Minor and all of those, I think they knew what was coming. So they'd already mapped out that there was going to be a needed for an international payment method like PayPal. And that vision, they knew that whoever would open up that and do that would make loads and loads of money, and that they were chosen to be the ones because they were the ones who were being given the gift, you could say, of controlling these platforms and making the money from it, and then using that money to fund other things that they would develop later because they've got great intellect. There's no doubt that Elon Musk and Peter Thiel are great thinkers. No doubt at all. Whether you like what they're thinking or
Yeah,
not,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
they're very intelligent folk.
to take like a little step back, so this is like they're basically building a technical infrastructure, likely a technocratic one, which then installs a new paradigm of thinking, a new way of us as civilians operating. And I know recently you've been doing some stuff on kind of the political infrastructure of where they're trying to. I might get it wrong, third way or third wave. I'm not sure. It sounds like it should be wave, but so this is kind of like this evolution of ideology, effectively, right? So this is on the political sphere, but I'm curious also into that. So what have you actually uncovered on the kind of political sphere in, I would call it manipulating people's ideology more so than politics, right?
Yeah, what I was saying right at the start there about Thiel being the person who chooses the third option, the third way, that's what all of these ideologies are. I've done 2 articles recently called The Third Way and then The Third Culture. And they both are come from an ideology that says there's a binary dialectical that exists, and what we're going to do is we're going to find the third way on top of that. So politically, they knew that there was left and right paradigm, and left and right paradigm was the scourge of politics for 150 years plus, since modern democratic political systems existed, you've got left and right, and the governments were switching between either you have a right-wing government or left-wing. And the reason why that is so is because all of the solutions to all of the ills of the world are all either on the left or right of the political spectrum. If you want to pull strings on the left and the supporters on the left, if it works out, the world turns slightly left, and then the right pulls back once there's a reaction to it, and then it swings over to the right. And in the 80s, they really started, before that, I've done research going back to the 50s and 60s and how they're looking at political ideology. And first of all, they realize they need to work out technology, what the future is going to look like, so they know how to manipulate political ideology. But politics and technological advancement are inextricably linked. You can only institute a different political ideology easy as like a political socio-cultural reform if you've got a paradigm shift in technology. The reason why post-war world was so good for that was because, of course, you had mutually assured destruction and perpetual limited warfare, and you had these new technology of nuclear, the atomic bomb, and that changed the paradigm so much that they were able to then use that to create intelligence infrastructures and things that beforehand would not have been acceptable. And you can manufacture consent from those things. But they realized back then, you need to create leadership if you're going to go with your political ideology. I mean, back then, I've covered about how the CIA started coupping countries in the Middle East, like, Egypt with King Farouk and Mohammed Mossadegh in 1953. And that was so they could install their own leaders eventually who would sway to their own political will and would join them in their quest to take over the world. And the thing is, with that was an era of post-Keynesian economics, and that was always going to evolve even further. There was going to be something to come afterwards, and they knew it, and they wanted to be in control of it. So the people at Harvard really took the lead on this. They've been, really trying to develop something that allows them to keep control. And in the 80s, by the 80s, Anthony Giddens was creating the new political philosophy that is of the now, third way politics. Sorry. To apologize. The political ideology of third way politics is very simple to define. If you kind of understand it, there's this left and right that had been the scourge of man, the scourge of political systems for years beforehand. And they didn't think they'd get out of that. And they needed a new way, a third way, which was really centrist. If they wanted to stop the left and right being in power, they need to have this vacuous blob of nothingness. Because, like I say, all the solutions on the left or the right, none of the solutions on the center. So they knew that, and they knew also that they would have to fill up the vacuum created by the lack of solutions. They'd have to fill that vacuum with something. And eventually that became austerity, war, and technological solutions. Now, the reason why in the 80s and 90s, third way was starting to be really recognized was because they knew there was a new technological paradigm coming. They knew not only computers was coming, but they knew that AI was going to be a thing of the future, and that was going to be all-encompassing. And they wanted to know how to manipulate that very early on. But for a new technological revolution, you need to have, like I say, a political ideology that goes alongside it, a leadership group that can implement that political ideology, and then you need to manufacture the consent of the people who are voting for this, because they still got to get it through the democratic system that exists.
Well, what democratic system exists? It's like this false ideal of like, okay, you do this has impact, and then they also bolster that thing, which we can see like in the last election in the US, where this is the election to save us again. This is why it will save us. This is why it's so important that you do that. So you believe that the democratic principles actually exist. Super interesting. I'm very curious your take actually on, say, Trump getting into power with the different individuals. So like obviously you have Elon Musk, RFK, all of these different individuals that come in from different angles.
Let's go via, because I mean, this is why third way politics and ideology was so interesting. You have to understand what it did that allowed this current wave to happen, and there's certain elements of what happened in the American election which only exist because third way politics happened. And so in 1992, Bill Clinton, when he's running for office, he's saying third way politics is what I'm going to use. He says it out loud. He makes speeches about it. The third way is the new way. He creates the new Democrat Party. He says, we're no longer left. We're moving to the center. Bill Clinton has a team underneath him that includes people like British people like Yvette Cooper, who's now our Home Secretary, very influential in the Labour Party. People like John Prescott, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Ed Miliband, Ed Balls, David Miliband, all of these British Labour left-wing politicians are all studying in America during that time under people like Ed Balls is under people like Larry Summers and Robert Reich. And they're implementing third way rule. And eventually Labour become New Labour, formed out of the idea of New Democrats. And Tony Blair states out loud, we're going to be using third way politics. And third way politics purges the left of the party and pulls the party into the center. And with that, it garners more of the voting populations, more of the voters will automatically be attracted to third way politics because it offers so many solutions. It doesn't tell you how it's going to get to those solutions. It just offers you. It says, we're going to solve this problem. We're going to solve this problem. And there's no way, no roadmap to it. And so it moves into the center. And people love the promises. The voters love the promises. So they vote for it. They voted Bill Clinton in twice. They voted. Tony Blair was just winning election after election. And so to compete, the right wing needed to move into the center too. So the center left purges its left as much as possible and becomes centrist. The center right then has to do the same as a reaction if it wants to get power again. The Labour Party would have continued to win. The Democrats would continue to win unless the right purges their right wing and moves into the center ground as well. And that's what happened. That's what we've had happen. We've had politics move into the centre, and we've had the right of the parties in America and Britain and other places like Germany, France, etc. They're pushed out. Left is pushed out. You end up with a centrist blob, and that centrist blob is in power today. The election that happened recently is a really good example of the consequence of this, because you've got a Democrat like Donald Trump running for the Republicans all of a sudden. You know already over the past 10, 15 years, people are saying, why is that Donald Trump like able just to be a Republican all of a sudden? He was a Democrat, and now he's running for a Republican. Well, in this election, we saw lots of Democrats running as Republicans. We saw the Republican Party being taken over by what would have originally been left-wing politicians, but none of them are left-wing. The Republican and the Democrat Party were pushed by third-way politics into the centre ground, and then they're all the same. They'll offer you the same solutions, but they'll lie to how they're going to get there. They'll give you all of the rhetoric, and they'll give you all of the promises, but how they're actually going to get there is tricksy. And we could talk about like the immigration policy as an example of this, because that's a really good way to describe it. But it means that you've got Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., you've got Donald Trump and Elon Musk. These are all Democrats. These are now the central people on the Republican Party side. Only happen because they're in the center, because they're so close to the left and the right that they can just swap. They could just swap. The same happened in Britain as well. We had one woman, I can't remember what her name is, one MP, just before the election, switched from Conservative to Labour. And she's basically a right-wing politician in what we would have seen it before. She was like on the right of the Conservative Party, but the Conservative Party got pushed so much towards the centre that she could flip over to Labour, and there's no difference anymore. There's no left-wing. There's no right wing. They've all been decimated. So there's no solutions either. And so economic policy, if you look at that paradigm and how it shifted through economic policy, or through immigration policy, sorry. The reason I say economic slips in there is because one of the main arguments is economic immigration is the problem. We're happy for immigration to happen, like in a natural way, but economic immigration will just mean, in this world that we live in today, that we're pulling in loads of people from other countries into our own countries. It decimates society, culture, it lowers the wages of the native workers, and everybody ends up having lower wages and end up being even more enslaved to the people above. And the native population destabilizes. It loses its jobs because it's got these cheap workers coming in all over the place. For that, they lose their society and culture.
This is like the what do you call it? Like more the labor type of low-level economic workers versus the high-level, I don't know, technical talent or academic talent that exists.
There's I would say there's two. If we want to get into the details of economic migration, there's the high-level economic migration, and then there's a standard economic migration. There's very much two tiers to our society that's being created for us now. One is
it's not.
One is just really all the people who don't have purchasing power. So those include the native workers and the economic migrants being brought in to replace those people. And replace is a word that people use, and they use terms like great replacement, etc. And that is really, I call it the great synthesis. They're synthesizing our populations together rather than replacing us.
This is the problem reaction solution thing, where both in Europe and in the US, this is the right-left problem paradigm, not the centrist thing you're talking about, which is interesting politically. They still use the left-right problem, but then the next thing will still solve the problem regardless, even if it's centrist. So it's like the border crisis, where you have like open borders and people just coming across for some reason, obviously. Like, normally you have this, I don't know how it is, like a mile-long border where you get checked all the time, and then all of a sudden it stops functioning and working. Like, maybe it's intended.
So I wrote an article about this in between the Third Way article and the Third Culture article. I wrote an article about Eric Weinstein of the Intellectual Dark Web and his work for the UN from 2000 to 2002, mapping out economic migration at levels that we're seeing today. So the economic migration that we're seeing today was mapped out for the UN by Eric Weinstein through what he described on his own website as a flagship program. And he mapped out all of these issues that were going to happen, the native workers being at the wages being drawn down, their lives being destabilized, and how to get around it and say eventually, yeah, they may get poorer, but eventually everybody will be better off because we'll all live in harmony. That's the kind of like which is vacuous crap. At one point during that report that he writes for the UN, he's like, there is a missing factor that is the solution for all this that is so far unseen. And that is put forward as a solution. There's a thing that we don't know yet is a solution, which is that's a really simple way to get out of the problem. But what we're seeing today, let's go not get too lost. We're seeing immigration happen, and we're seeing these new people come in, and they've said, Elon Musk has said, border walls, deportation. Trump said deportation, border walls. They're all in it together. Deportation, border walls, they're saying.
And then Peter Thiel, and then
Then the election's won, and Elon Musk is pumping out Riley Gaines. And she's saying, my boyfriend, he wanted to come here, and he had to go through all of this trouble. He had to go through all of these forms, all of this legal hassle to become a legal citizen of America, and we should make that easier. So their solution isn't to stop economic migration, isn't to send people back. It's to make it easier for those guys to come in legally and for it to be legal. So to get rid of illegal immigration, they're going to say, let's make it legal. That's it. That's going to be the solution. The solution is it's currently legal. Everybody's in shock. Soon it will be made so easy that these people under Trump, the load of these people will be able to come in through normal channels legally, and they'll go, well, that's legal immigration. That's not illegal immigration. That's good immigration. We said we'd stop illegal immigration, but you just made illegal immigration legal. That's all you've done. And that's what they're going to do. They're not going to give you solutions. They're not going to actually save the day. They're not going to come in riding on their horseback and send back 11 million illegals. I think it's been like the numbers being put around to something like 10, 11 million illegal immigrants that they could send back. They're not going to do any of that. They may like send back the worst, the criminals, the stuff, the people who they can find. But then that's contrived because they're still probably going to let the 7 million or
it's not going to matter unless it's like actually published, meaning using the media to define like, okay, this thing has happened for this reason, which is then again telling us that this is a good thing or a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, even saying it's legal, illegal, it doesn't really matter. It's like obviously there's some porn moving on a chessboard for particular reasons where sometimes I need to move the pawn forward so I can whack the pawn over, this type of stuff. It's that's why it's really curious, because like you have a perspective obviously on some of these characters in this narrative, like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and how they pretend to be things that they're not. I'm sure there's other characters you can bring up, which would be great if you would, and how they're let's say they're who they are in the story has changed. So they once upon a time were this, and then they became this, and then they became that. Which for me is just like an earmark. Okay, you've changed because of some reason. What's the reason now?
I find it really interesting to look at Jordan B. Peterson when we're talking about this. I mean, is one of the most, looking back with all of the different research I've done, looking back, the intellectual dark web of people like Peter Thiel, Brett Weinstein, Eric Weinstein, eventually Douglas Murray, Joe Rogan in there, Dave Rubin, of course, hanging around, Ben Shapiro. These people, these intellectual dark web folk who were all attached to Peter Thiel in some way as well. Eric Weinstein being the head of Thiel Capital. For like, he's literally vice president of Thiel Capital, or was he heading up Thiel Capital? It's one of the two, but still is, I think. They've all got some form of distant link, at least with this whole like echo chamber created on purpose for us to indulge in, where we're listening to these people telling us how to live our life. First of all,
Yeah.
they've got to create a culture war that made us all unite under a banner of like against some anti-logic. So an example of this was the trans ideology. You know, they forced a lot of that stuff on us so that they could have the reaction. Again, problem, reaction, solution. They create the problem, they get the reaction, and they implement the solution. The solution is you can't have these illogical people in control of everything. You need us because we're the logical minds. We're the ones who are saying, oh no, a man's a man and a woman's a woman. So because we're using that base logic.
Total basic stuff before, right?
Yeah, but that's the audience needs total basic stuff because the audience have been so dumbed down over the years that they've been created into these. They're just they're moldable. You can just give them whatever ideology you want, give them whatever anger they want using social media, and you put them out there. What I found really interesting about Jordan B. Peterson in particular, when you're looking at the evolution of this movement, is he comes out as this guy who says, look, sense. I'm a clever boy. I understand psychology, Solzhenitsyn, behavioral stuff. Everybody listen to me, listen to my insights. Really interesting. Kind of on the right, a little bit libertarian, religious aspects thrown in. Loads of people get on board, and it because the world is in such a mess, society is in such a mess, culture is in such a mess. A strong, stable voice during a time like that, a guy who's going to tell you the 12 rules on how to live your life and all of these different things. That person is someone that everybody follows. They're just like, it's a breath of fresh air. And you heard this all throughout the early years of Jordan B. Peterson, people saying, thank you so much, Mr. Peterson. It's a really big breath of fresh air to hear you talking slowly. He's getting his popularity and he's seeding in all of these other people who are hanging around with him. And these are all the people who are supposed to be sensible. And it's like people like Ben Shapiro. But Ben Shapiro uses constant logical fallacies. So I'm watching Jordan Peterson being able to break down the logical fallacies and explain them of this side over here, but then talk to Ben Shapiro, listen to him use the same logical fallacies, things like whataboutism and stuff, and not mention them. Not point them out, not say, hey, what's going on there? And so
yeah.
Well, go on.
Sorry, go on.
I like this. This is
not professional. Go on.
I'm gonna take the lead on this and just say, when it got to 2019, 2020, Jordan B. Peterson's time of doing that part of the operation, you could say, came to an end and a new one started. And you can see that in Jordan Peterson's life. He goes off out of the limelight. He has a real bad time personally. He's addicted to painkillers and drugs. This guy who's the stable component to the modern culture that's rising is a mess in a dark room, it's given to us, unable to work things out. And when he starts to come back, he's like pro-vaccine, telling people to, take the jab regardless of the logic that would be behind it. He's much more like firebrand-like. His rhetoric has become much firmer, much more conservative, and he starts to show himself a little bit more for who he is and be unrepentant because he's got so much backing. This is kind of the arch that you've got, the creation of the logical mind that has the hero story and the hero arc, and then has this catastrophe, but turns out just to literally back up everything that the establishment is saying at the time when the establishment needs you to say it. And that is extremely suspicious.
Everybody. It's like the Neil Young stuff as well, right? It's like he was like, I don't know, I can't remember the exact song where he's talking about like fighting the machine, and then he's like basically uses the tool against Joe Rogan, mind you, which is also potentially has his influences. It's like this whole like script, let's say, right?
Mm.
Yeah, it's a funny
Well,
one.
the only song you got to point to with Neil Young is "The Needle and the Damage Done." That
Yeah, that was the one.
song,
That was the one.
yeah,
Needle
yeah,
and
yeah,
Damage Done.
yeah.
And I was like, come on, mate. Like, literally, listen to your own lyrics.
Honestly, it's cheesy as hell. It's so contrived. What happened with Jordan B. Peterson is he was able to bring a load of people who probably wouldn't been interested in maybe less so Joe Rogan, but more people like Douglas Murray and other people, and a lot of Zionists, people into their realm, and made people think that this is the logical, clever thinkers. These are the people who know what they're doing. These are the people you should listen to. These are the people who will give you your rules for life. And now we've got our new patriarchy. We got our new mental patriarchy, a philosophical patriarchy that tells us which direction we should go. And when you look at the direction they go, it's really dystopian, authoritarian. It's the exact same things we've done before, but in a techno level. Like
Yeah,
it's yeah.
technically repressing. But like creating the problem initially, so like the Jordan Peterson stuff, like you have a what do you say, like a bashed male class of people that don't have purpose, and then you give a male role model, and you have all these guys that then follow this fella. That's like one of the things. And then, as you said, like prescribe how they think. It's not critical thinking. It's like going, okay, this is the way to do things. And then anything they say after that point, it becomes gospel. So it's like a prophet of some description, right? I'm very curious. Like, it seems like even in independent media that like it's every individual is still basically susceptible to control and influence, and how to tell and how to measure people that aren't swayed, because I think it has a lot to do with economics, which is like at a certain point you find some success and then you get basically manipulated. I'll use the proxy of like comedy. So the comedy is a better one because it's not so political, which is like you have a comedian that is very crass, very abrasive, says anything on their mind, can push buttons politically or like with gender, and they're just, okay, this is someone that is new, someone that is interesting, someone that's being themselves. And then eventually they get to a point where they might get a deal, which is like, okay, a TV show or something like this, and then like then they change. Then now it's like, okay, I don't say those things anymore because they have a deal.
I
So it's
can't
like,
even tell you the amount of deals that I've been offered in some way over the past 2 years. Like big deals, maybe two or three, and looking at them directly, I knew what the whole arrangement was. The arrangement was I stop speaking about this, I get this. It really, like,
they
including
had those
books.
on paper contract. They're like, okay, these are topics that are no go.
These are topics that are hard to talk about because eventually,
Mm.
like when you're in this realm, I'm reporting on things like intelligence, Epstein case, etc. I have loads of people who contact me. Some of them are really like, will offer some sort of insight that's extremely useful to me about something that is, in a sense, inert to them, usually because of the passage of time. So, say I'm writing up an article about someone in the past, and that person's really old, they're going to die soon. This is an example I'm giving. I'm not going to say quite the details of this yet, but someone who's very old, they're going to die soon, and it's easy for someone to come along and say, hey, I could give you all of this information and you can write a book and I can help you get the book deal and take you away from all of the stuff you're doing over here.
Exactly.
And as I go, ooh, that's really nice. I actually would like that, and that would actually solve out all my financial problems. And I start moving slowly towards that, and then I realize what the deal is meant. The deal means that I'm not going to be able to talk about this or do this or do this, and I'm like, wow,
Because you're
that's
focused on this.
I'm going to do both. And then it's like, no, that's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. That's not the way this stuff works. I have some people who try and plant information that is so carefully created that if I wrote it down, then I would end up, they would reveal the missing piece that I don't have that would undermine the whole thing that I've written. Oh, yeah. I had one person last year when I was having a bad time last year, and someone came into my life and said, hey, I've got this article here, this potential article here. It's a story that's amazing. Israeli intelligence taking over a power creating unit. Let's say an actual power, like, a hydroelectric power unit in America. And it's to run all of these data homes for servers and etc. Mm-hmm. It's taken away from the town. It's a brilliant story. Look, this is, and then when you actually write it down, it all looks perfect. And I got to the end of an article at one point on something related to this. And at the end of the article, I always go, okay, I'm now going to strongman, strawman every single part of my own argument. Right. And I went through the entire thing, every detail. And when I get to things where I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. I gotta prove that. And there was one thing within this article where I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I gotta prove this. And I kept trying to prove it. And then I discovered that that one piece was wrong and the whole thing was wrong. And it was given to me in a way that meant that I would be publishing an erroneous article and someone would say, no, that's erroneous. And then all the rest of my work would be undermined by the fact I got one thing wrong once in an article that was carefully given to me and sown to me in that way. And I think it was a way to complete, and the person who gave it to me was so kind and lovely towards me, and I felt the whole time there was something wrong. I just felt like this thing, I'm gonna have to really check out what's on. No, the police are coming for you. I can hear them in the background. They're coming for you, man.
This is Poland. There's more police than there are people.
You shouldn't be talking about these things. But it's like there's plenty of times over the past few years. I had another one where a guy came to me, said, I got all the recordings for the JP Morgan mock trial about Jeffrey Epstein. And I was like, what do you mean recordings? And he had secretly recorded illegally the trial, the mock trial that comes before the trial of the JP Morgan case to undermine me. So he could send me the information.
That's my point. It's that's really obvious, because that's logically, you'd never do that unless you have a...
So I release it. I can never go to America without being arrested. I've broken the law because I'm releasing information that's gained through an illegal source. I'm now in the gray zone. I'm now in a place where they can. It looks like we could possibly get you on that. We could possibly
they can get you for anything like this.
So they plant shit with you. They plant stuff on you. They give you the stuff. They come to you directly, and I've experienced this over and over again in the past few years.
But how do you mitigate this? So more on the sifter side of things, I'm very curious. It's like I feel like that has to be a lot to do with instinct, right? Someone's too nice, then something's wrong.
All of this is, but that's it. All of this, if something's too good to be true, then it probably is. All of this is instinct. And I think that's really what, if someone come along and offered me £1 million to, or $1 million, whichever one, I'll accept $1 million, who cares? Now, if someone offered me a big bulk of money that would be enough that I would no longer have to worry and do work, would I take it to break my whole paradigm of trust with myself, with the people around me? Would I do that? I don't know. I know that I've been offered, and there's certain things that I'm really reticent to talk about, because some of these people who I've had this experience with, I'm going through these experiences with now. So I listen to people talk. I let them say their stuff. I don't go, what you're doing is wrong, I'm never going to talk to you again, because then I don't know. I'm an investigative journalist. My point is curiosity all of the time. I want to see how far to behind the curtain I can get before I get shot down or run over by a truck.
It's the Wizard of Oz. They found the guy.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it comes to a point where if you see too far behind the curtain, you end up like Mark Middleton, hung up to a tree with a shotgun wound to the chest and with a verdict of suicide. You know, if you keep looking behind the curtain as much as possible, and then if you then, what the trick is, if you then say to the person who's showing you behind the curtain, oh, look, this is exactly why you're showing me behind the curtain, they quickly leave. And that can be your litmus test to whether you could trust someone. Because
Because they'll leave or they'll stay
yes,
and
they'll
argue
leave.
with you.
They'll leave. They will not. There is someone who I've been dealing with for a while who at one point offered me something that would have literally undermined everything and would have given me, during a time of my life where I was most financially insecure, would have given me complete security all of a sudden, continuously, but would have undermined my entire platform. And the offer came in a way that the person had gained a load my trust completely. And then when the offer came, it was like I was talking to this person at 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and I can tell you I listened to this person talk for an hour and a half silently with my mouth, like they would have, like that they would have known that it was shock and horror on my face. And I had to just sit there the entire time and at the end say, I've got to go away and think about this. So it's not only like instinct, it's once you get that, you feel that instinct, what do you do with it? What's your reaction to feeling instinct? Is it to feel I can do this and go down this road? I just see, like in that situation, I just saw darkness. I just saw like my whole
Really?
life. I would feel really sad with myself forever. I'm a very emotional person anyway. If I can't countenance what I'm supposed to do morally or ethically, then why would I do it? Because otherwise I've got to live with myself. I've got to live with my own conscience afterwards. And so it comes down to not only instinct, but then what do you do once you get that instinct? And I would like to make it as easy as saying, oh, the majority of people will go with it, or them, and try and make myself some sort of like heroic figure who's managed to. The only reason I'm stopping doing this is I've had really negative experience from offers that are too good to be true throughout my life. It's my own experience
There's
of.
hope in disappointment in some way.
Yeah, well, it comes down to saying that my experience is that if I accept things that look too good to be true, I end up really sad afterwards, because I find that it's only me who's tricked myself, and I've just accepted something that I shouldn't accept. And so I'm lucky to have really negative experiences in the background. I think that's what it is. I'm lucky to have already gone through a load of really negative experiences, some of them with positive aspects, of course. I mean, you don't go on these sort of adventures and you don't like have just what you're essentially doing is selling out your soul. Like that's like something that's hard to understand. It's something where you've got to think about it. I knew there was one point in my journalistic career where I knew everything was going to change, and that was when I started to. It was the day before I was releasing the Nicole Youngkerman article about Jeffrey Epstein's relationship with this woman who's an IDF linked Bond girl, as I called her, who had loads of different really, really nefarious links. I knew as soon as I entered into that, I was entering into the Epstein case, and I was entering into going against active intelligence assets, and that would be. That is a change logically.
So it's like the real time interference with intelligence gets you into trouble, not the post narrative.
So a lot of my work is trying to understand the history of how we got here, but that only I don't only like go into the past. I go all the way. I pull out all the way up to the future, and that's really dangerous because it gives a contextual understanding of how these assets got to where they were, and it's hard to argue with. They have to just censor me, and they've had those tools at their disposal for the past 5, 6, 7 years. So that's what they've been doing with me. They've just been censoring me.
How have they censored you?
How do they censor?
Yeah, like how have they censored you specifically? You're talking like this
In the
platforms or
past, Hamilton 68 and the like were there's no doubt that I was being. I mean, I tried to release articles on things like Facebook, and I'd try and advertise them, and it would be like advertising, yeah, and it would say advert running for this amount of time, amount of money taken, like for the advertising campaign, zero for the whole time, because they wouldn't show anybody my adverts and they wouldn't take any money from me. They would just like platforms like Facebook, YouTube. The algorithm, we all know the algorithm is completely systematically contrived to show the people who they want you to see.
actively manipulating you as
Yeah,
well, right?
yeah,
Changing your consciousness.
to get reach has been really hard. Within X was Twitter, even though that I was being censored all the time, I was putting out my work all the time. People were putting out my work all the time, and so that meant I had like a slow progression of follower count. That was extremely useful throughout that. When I started working for writing for Unlimited Hangout UK column, when I started to get more like go on all podcasts and etc., they can't stop that sort of exposure from increasing my count. But at the same time that it goes up, it comes with new problems. At the beginning of this year, something changed. And I think it comes down to the mechanisms of censorship changed. They had decided, obviously, when Elon Musk bought the platform, things opened up for a short amount of time, and suddenly, like, I was like, oh wow, this is what it's like to have an account where you got loads of stuff on and people are interested in interacting, and then it got limited again. And in the beginning of this year, I got invited on a load of X spaces. It was actually someone complicated who contacted me and was like, "Get on this X space now. Talk to this person, and you'll get on it." And it was a big X space. It was one of the Mario Nafwal X spaces. They're aligned with Musk and other people, of course. And it was the Epstein files. And I messaged the person who I was told to contact, blah, 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 and I became central to the major Epstein files spaces. And they were for 6 hours at a time, 5-6 hours at a time. I ended up talking with people like Rudy Giuliani and Alex Jones and stuff, and like very really weird sort of situations where they're always reverting back to me to find out what I think about what's just been said and etc. And I was just like, okay, that's never happened with me. My follower count increased by like 15,000 in the matter of a day, and more people got exposure, and they're starting something which even back then I'd already studied this. I'd studied it when I was writing Edelman PR and the Manufacturing of Trust for Unlimited Hangout, and it was looking at basically the idea of flooding the zone during Event 201 about a supposed coronavirus pandemic that could go around the place, that was run in 2019, just after it was leaked out from Wuhan medical facilities anyway, whether that was on purpose or not, who knows. When they did that, Matthew Harrington, who represented Edelman PR, was on Event 201 saying, one of the ways we could do this, control the flow of information, is by flooding the zone with information. For them, that meant like flooding the zone with pro-medical establishment information, every single avenue, paying loads of different people to push out loads of content that says, well, these guys are good, Pfizer good, Pfizer good, Pfizer good, government good, government good, government good, coronavirus dangerous, or disgust if you don't wear masks, etc., and all of this. They're flooding the zone with information. But what I think we're about to see in the media realm, social media realm, is a flooding of the zone approach to all information. They're just going to let everybody out. They're just going to pull down the floodgates, and it allows for, it's almost like the horses of the era for the race to fifth generation warfare. The fifth generation warfare main race, the horses are all in their stalls, And we think it's bad now. But once those horses start galloping, the race is on. And we will not know what is up, what is down, what is left and right. And the only way they can make that happen
It's still
is
like
by
that now.
masses.
So like what are the new horses? Like what are the horses they're going to release on us next? About
hyper version. So imagine for us, we're talking from an educated view. From we go and we look around and we understand that there's two sides to the coin, and we've looked at the coin from all angles. The majority of people haven't looked at the coin from all angles, and once they look at the coin from all angles, the whole of society goes into turmoil. Goes in because imagine it. And this is what the paradigm shift. I think. Imagine this: the world of September the 11th was an inside job. The world of JFK was assassinated via a CIA outfit. The world of the CFR controlling the Bilderberg, controlling the world in loads of different ways and manipulated loads of things. That the war on terror was part contrived by the Israeli National Security Estate to force constant perpetual warfare. Everything has been contrived. Imagine that is just the status quo all of a sudden. It goes from the paradigm where the majority of people think all of those are conspiracy theories to the fact that conspiracy theories now are just labeled conspiracy because that's what they were all along. And then everybody suddenly lives in that paradigm where it flips the world of the normies, not us. We already know what's going on, but we're a very tiny, slim percentage compared to what we have a vast knowledge compared to what the rest of the people have. They have this very controlled. I listen to people's conversations in bars and pubs all of the time. I can't help it.
Pointless.
I love it. I'm a talker anyway, so like me and my dog will go in a pub.
I can imagine you in a pub.
Honestly, you're right. Your imagination is right.
Yeah.
I go into a pub.
What did you say? What did you say?
I literally go from person to person at times.
God.
I feel sorry. It's really interesting. I talk to everybody. I don't lecture people at all. Unless they kind of like want to be lectured. They show they want to be lectured.
Who wants to be lectured, like honestly? I think being open to listen to or something.
There's a couple of a lot of the time, like I'll interact with people over a period of weeks, in my area, my community. I'll go in. Like my dog is hard to work out what her breed is. People are like, oh yeah, there's half Yorkshire, half something else. And I'm like, I'll buy you a drink. You get free guesses. Over 200 people have played this game in the past 3 months, may I say. It's
Is free beer or
it's like groups of like, yeah. Whoever gets her breed, the other part of her breed, gets a free drink of their choice. They can choose the swankiest drink in the place. And I've had like tables of like 10, 15 people, all having free guesses each.
a Chihuahua, yeah, probably, right? Something ridiculous.
Oh, you fucker, man. You got it in one and you didn't even see it. I really mean it. She's a chalky. Yeah. So she's a... Listen, to the people who are listening,
the game with me.
Don't give this away. Yeah, you just got it spot on the first time. She's a chalky. So no one can work out that she's a Chihuahua because they think of Chihuahuas as small. They don't think of standard and long-haired Chihuahuas, which are lengthier. And she's a Chihuahua Yorkie, but she's so intelligent. So you wouldn't think she's a Chihuahua because Chihuahuas are always seen as really stupid. She's like super switched on. She'll go from people's lap to people's lap, and these people play the game, and they all say they all sit round and they, and I get to watch what they're like, their psychology, working together as a group, how they come to terms with it, and it's really interesting to see how people interact with this like game, and they become competitive. Some people like use their guesses straight away, some people slowly, and so after a time I get to know people and I get to know how to talk to them. That's the big thing. So there's two examples I'll give of what we were just talking about before this, getting off the subject of my beautiful Bella Boo. There was one set where I had just had a bit of a backwards and forwards with a barman there was a barman in my local who was a bit of a dick for a while, and I didn't get on with him at all. He just hated, he was just rude to me and nasty to me. And it turned out he was nasty to me because I smelt of weed. Yeah, because I smelt of weed. And one day he come round
I'd be angry with that. I don't
Yeah, he came
understand.
around the front of the bar one day and was like, "I got to tell you, you smell of weed." And he did it in front of a load of people, and I was like, "Okay, I smell of weed. What are you going to do? Because I'm sure there's people who come in here who smell of piss, who smell of shit, and you're not going to say anything to them, but you're going to say something to me about smelling of weed. What's your problem, or what's illegal about smelling of weed? Come on, if you want to call the police and get the police to come and search me, let's see how that works out for you. Because the police will tell you on the telephone." He smells of weed. So what? So why are you coming behind the bar in front of a load of people and trying to be like, "Oh, he smells of weed"? And the guy was like, "Okay." And he went back behind the bar and disappeared. And I got really peed off. And I went out the back of this bar and I sat down with my drink and I was like, "Oh, this guy's a dick to me. I don't like it." And there was these two guys, poor guys. There were these two guys who were sitting there and they were talking about AI. And I was like in a pissed off state, and
Jesus.
I had a little conversation. I entered into the conversation slightly after Bella had interacted with them. Anyway, she was already sitting on one of their laps. That's what she does. She goes, she gets involved. I told this. I started talking about AI, and these guys said, "Oh, you sound like you know a lot about this sort of stuff. What do you do?" And I told them I was an investigative journalist, and they both looked a bit like, "Oh, you sound like you're from the conspiracy theory realm, that's." And so they asked me a couple of questions, and it led to me saying, "Okay, I'm going to spend just 10 minutes right now, and I'm going to tell you something that will break your paradigm of how you think the world works." Because they were talking about power, leadership, they were talking about voting, things like that. Yeah. So I told them about Kissinger's international leadership program, about how Schwab had gone through there, about how they had created the World Economic Forum out of that, and the World Economic Forum create the policy that then get given to governments, and the governments install that policy into power. And so we're being run by people from the 50s and 60s in Harvard, in elite universities, based upon the fact that they are being propelled forward by the atomic era and the nuclear standoff and the fear of mutually assured destruction and the like. And what I told them was 100% fact. Every single part of it is provable, definitive fact. I didn't tell them anything outside, and they thought that nearly everything I said was fiction. They could not believe it.
This is the real fundamental issue in society, which is like one of these. There's a few topics I think is out there that we don't really talk about, which is this. I'd call it the susceptibility of the human mind, and for the rudimentary nature, like the fixation we have to like our point of view. Like it's normally propagated, so they get a propagated view, and then it gets entrenched. And breaking an entrenched view is the thing we really need to be talking about, because you can't, like, that takes time. It takes the same repetition of propaganda to shatter. And normally you might get like one friend or one mate that's like, "Okay, fine, I'm going to spend, I don't know, like 10 times in the pub with him," and he might, concede one point of view. That might be the thing. And that would be it normally. There's this famous story of this I can't remember the name of the guy who went to each Ku Klux Klan member and just showed that basically black people are friendly, and then they had to change their worldviews because unfortunately they met a very friendly black person, so their whole world got shattered.
Yeah, that's the way it works. So I know that with these guys, it didn't end there. It didn't end there. It almost ended there. The one guy couldn't handle it and just made his excuses and left and went to the bar and looked very afraid. And the other guy sat there basically screaming at me about how wrong I was, and how all of the facts that I was saying were just fictions and I was making it up. And he was literally just like angry. He was angry I dared to touch his idea of how the world worked. And I was just saying, you can check all this stuff out yourself. I'm not even, you asked me for this. I'm giving you some facts. It changes your worldview. I can see that you're peed off. I'll leave it there. I got up eventually and left. Me and Bella went home. And a couple of weeks later, I was walking down the street and they're walking towards me down the street. And they literally walk out onto the road and walk on the road to go around me. in the
To
pavement.
avoid you.
That ideologically, yeah, to avoid me. They're walking towards me along the pavement. They're 10 meters away from me. They both smile at me, and then they go out onto the road and pass me on the road instead of having to walk past me on a very wide pavement where there's plenty of room, because their fear of me was clear. It was manifest. They were scared of what I was. I was
They're not
the
scared of you. They're
unknown.
not scared of you. They're not scared of you. They're scared
No, they're scared of
at the
information.
they're basically scared of change, and you represent that. So they don't want to deal with change.
Exactly. So I'm the image of change. Every time then I go past, they no longer went to that pub anymore. They stopped going to the pub. They started
That's how
going to
scared
another
people are for
place
change.
down the road. And when I was going down to the pub, whenever I was going down to the pub after a show, after I do the Johnny Vedmore show on TNT, me and Bella would get up afterwards. Bella would be waiting for me like, oh, let's go for a walk. And so we'd go down, get a drink. I'd write up a monologue for the next show, the next day's show while I was at the pub. And every time I was going by, I'd go past this one little bar that's there, small little bar. They're very nice in there. And they would be sitting in the table, and they would see me, and they would duck down, and they would put their heads down, and they would hide away from me, so they didn't get eye contact with me. And I knew that there's a process. There's a process to waking people up. You got to take your time. I'd say every time I'd see them, I'd be like, "Hello, how are you? Hope you're well. Keep moving forward." Have I lost you? Oh no, you're back, John.
Sorry, I'm not sure what happened there.
There you go. It's just, I think it's just the bandwidth is a little bit funky. So every time I see him, I'm really nice to him, and I knew there would be a second part to this. There would be another part to this, and that part was them having to see me again in a situation where they were going to have to decide how they acted with me. But they would also eventually see that how other people react to me. So I started saying, all right, I was already like in the mornings, in the place that they were going in the evenings, I was going in the mornings anyway. I would sit there, go see some friends who were sitting in there. It's a lovely place, Pop and Hops near me. It's a brilliant, it's like all independent brewed beer and stuff, it's all that sort of stuff. It's all trendy sitting around there. It would have been a hard place to sit during the pandemic for me, it would have been hard to put up with that. But I started to go in the night instead as well. And they've been in there a few times where they've seen that everybody in there knows me really well, that everybody is friendly to me, that we can all have conversations about things, and people don't have this fear like I'm going to rip out their soul in front of them and swallow it. And after that time, I can see them starting to be like, they started to talk to me again. They started to say, oh, hello, how are you? And be nice and be polite. They weren't being like that for a while. It took and then, for what we were saying at the time, at the start, I said there's two examples. That's one example. As an example of how people react, how you can't, if you let everything out all at once, you destroy people's paradigms, and they are scared of you. They're so scared of you, they'll risk death in the road to get to walk by you. On the other side, I've talked with some people who are extremely open to talking. So there was in exactly the same situation, just swap seats in the pub. I was on the other side and they were on the other side. Two girls in there. Both of them looked a bit like hippie. One was a bit hippie-like, and one was training in the army. And I had basically the same conversation with them, basically the same. And they weren't only receptive, they were just like, oh yeah, that's the way people lie to us all the time. People, if people are receptive to the fact that they're being lied to, then you can reach them, you can communicate information with them, you
It's
can.
general openness in so it's viewpoint. So regardless of what you believe, it's how open you are to other people having opposed or different, or it doesn't matter what it is. It's literally openness, and then constrained viewpoints. I have a very good mate, and funnily, everything I say is absolutely incorrect to him, and I was baffled. I was like, what does he actually think? Like it doesn't matter. And at the end of it, I got to the crux of it. It was like, John, there's a good guy and a bad guy, and I'm like,
Mhm.
what?
Mhm.
It's like, which side are you on? That was the point. And I was like, oh, Jesus, that's where we are.
Yeah, I have a
You need a
really
bad guy, and the bad guy that you're told who is the bad guy.
I have I think everybody will have experience. I mean, what we're talking about here as well is how people respond to how we express. People's responses are varied due to their own personal and independent psychology. And I have a really good friend who, when I say something that will break his worldview in any sort of area, he will get pedantic. He will get focused on words. He to the point where he'll ask for what a word that we both know means, because he's using a tool to stop from thinking logically, using his logical mind. He's using a tool to be like, okay, how can my mind distract itself from the information that is going in? I know I'll get hung up about a word and how a word is used instead. And I noticed this over time and realized that every single time that we reach that point where I'm like, how do I get through to him? We always end up with these circular arguments, and they're always about a word. It's always
Yeah,
about a
it's
word. And
linguistic arguments. I have this with people as well, where I had another friend talking about like, are you right or left? And I was like, mate, it's not how I think at all. And it's like, no, again, it's like this binary thinking.
Mhm.
And I was like, no, there's things I can see that are useful here and here. And he just wouldn't stop until I agreed with him. And then he wanted strong opinions on like feminism, which is a linguistic word that has like a history to it, and is like, are you for or against this? I'm like, God damn it! Like, can you like, what
The
is this
most
thing?
likely, the most likely thing that friend is centrist. He'll think he's left or he thinks he's right, but all of the views he will have been given, all of the culture wars that he will
Yeah,
be
yeah,
consuming, they will all actually be caused by centrist ideology being
yeah.
pushed upon people as left or right. And those people who say they're left or right aren't really left or right. Usually, those people are the bland center ground that have no. They're looking. They want to know your opinion because they're looking to adopt their next opinion, because they can't come up with their opinions themselves. They need someone to give them their
Oh,
opinions.
totally. And like when if I was to communicate and try to explore different ideals, like, they don't know what to do. Literally, they're hamstrung. They're like, no, go back to this previous thing. Which one? I'm like, oh my God.
Hmm.
Normally,
Yeah.
in my structure of sentences with people that I know I'll inflame is I tend to just ask questions, right? So it's like, what is your opinion on this? What do you think about what hypothetically if the world looked this way? What would you consider? And
But
then
then, yeah, they gerrymander it down to be, okay, how can I get you to consider things in exactly the same way as me and to only say what I want you to say? So I will give you a circumstance where you have to be in agreement with me. And if you're not in agreement with me, then oh, you must be wrong. You must be.
well, but this stuff's super super obvious. Like it's like, okay, they're just trying to railroad you towards a certain kind of perspective or something like this. For me, it's just like obviously just exploring ideas and trying to figure out anything and everything that's there. It doesn't really matter like right or wrong. It's like best guess, right? That's my
Yeah.
working construct on these things.
Yeah, I do roughly the same. I'm in a situation, so just sorting up my screen, and I in a situation where I'm like trying to understand how to explain things to everybody, not just to people who will read a 7,500 word article or who could possibly find by loads of people like say, I'll share out all my stuff all of the time, but people are like, where can I find your stuff still? Because they don't really, I mean, most people don't actually go and read anything. They don't actually go and watch long videos. They want someone else to just tell them how it is.
Yes and no, right? They don't want the person they don't want to tell them, and they want an authority to tell them.
Yeah, they want someone they trust to tell them. They want someone
Yeah.
they've chosen to trust. And they've only chosen to trust people based on where they were at the time, when they feel comfortable, and when they allowed in that information. And usually from people who have been selected by other people and told to them over and over again, this is a trusted authority on this subject. Don't listen to anyone else, which is, of course, is like, that's the most suspicious. That's how the mainstream work, really.
Yeah. That's why I'm very curious about like the independent side of these things, because they're switching from mainstream because they know the mainstream is dead effectively, and then they're shifting their pawns into the independent sector to then pretend like they're the protagonist on, you know.
Yeah, I
And
see.
I love this thing where they have to have like like they have to get fired in some dramatic way. That now they're the anti-establishment.
Yeah. This like Brett Weinstein, to be perfectly honest, is.
Mhm.
But also, it's just like I see Joe Rogan as you could call him like the head of, or the guiding star for the neo mainstream media. So this mainstream media wasn't going to die. It's not died. It's just changed its face. And it was going to change its face due to the way digitalization was happening, internet infrastructure was being created. So it was no longer going to be like you sit down and you've got 4 channels on the TV that you scroll through on your remote control,
Yeah,
and
technology changes.
yeah, so now it's like they've adapted to that, and now the people who are in government are using Joe Rogan as a tool to manipulate you into voting for them,
I'm very
or voting against your best interests.
yeah, like, well, the voting, it's like a two-party system is ridiculous, so there's no real option. But like with Joe Rogan, it's interesting because I think he has some authenticity to him, and then I think he's malleable to influence probably from intelligence agency individuals that put certain people on there, incredibly charismatic and intelligent people that like this JD Vance thing. So I've seen different things where they're telling a story about like how his son met Trump, blah blah blah, and I'm like, all right, you know, a bit of skepticism, and then later I'm like, no, this is like what is it, a Peter Thiel pick basically.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, he's got loads of connections to Teal very early on as well. JD Vance, he's got this story built up as well. Well,
Yeah,
people
that's the
don't.
one.
He come from a broken home in Ohio. He's just a normal, everyday Midwest type of guy. He's going out there trying to fight the power. He joined the army like a hero, and all of this. But then when you look at what he's done afterwards, he's been involved in a load of Peter Thiel organizations. He's been, a money man, etc. He's a technocrat. He's against everything he claims to be for now, which is obviously he was against it all at one point. He was anti-Trump at one point in all of this.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, openly as well, openly and then in 2021, probably with lots of money given to him by close associates, he's reforming himself as this candidate that's going to represent the people now, against this massive evil empire. And he's part of the evil empire. It's just they're different stranded. They're the neo evil empire. These are the guys who are going to be in control in the future. These are the technocrats in near future as well. It's not even they're going to be in control in January. That's how near the future is.
So,
They can.
what is your thoughts actually on different power vying groups competing against each other? So, like, say Teal being from one group versus, say, the Clinton, or it's just two sides of the same hand, or
One
two hands from the same body. Mm.
pushing people like Tony Blair. Tony Blair's like trying to create the technocracy in many regards. You know, he's pushing for it in many regards. He's been pushing for digital IDs from the start. He's Clinton. He was, you know, infused by Clinton, aligned with Clinton, put the same political infrastructure in as Clinton, put a load of people who had links to the American, these American elites in this circle into power. And then the next dynasty are the people they put into power who claim to be different from them. But
Right.
Elon Musk is introducing the same World Economic Forum idea of the world of tomorrow. In reality, he's actually doing it. They created the policies that said, oh, in the future, we'll own nothing and be happy, and you'll have megacities, and we'll all live like this, and you'll be forced out of this, and you'll be forced out of that, and we'll have equality in loads of different ways, and stakeholder capitalism.
Say it's just a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel are creating that world. They are making it manifest.
Bullshit.
Yeah, so they're the same people. They're the same. They're a different part of the evolutionary process of the same people, of the same sort of mechanisms.
I'm really curious because like these are still, I'd say, front men to those that finance them. So we normally talk about puppets, not really. Like, okay, Elon Musk is the richest guy in the world. Yeah, bullshit. It's like obviously some older family that doesn't hit on the Forbes list, right? Or families. So like the Rockefellers and a bunch of other different older families. I'm very curious to like what earmarks you might know or think that exist to like hinting at like who these guys are. So you obviously have like Kissinger with the Rockefellers being like, you know, highly linked. You can see the links there. But are there such things for like Thiel and Musk? Or is it like through proxies, through intelligence agencies, or?
Well, okay. So I think personally, you look through, I wrote the Third Culture article recently, which was about Musk's training in behavioral economics, a form of nudging, psychological manipulation en masse via a Jeffrey Epstein funded program in EDGE. And he's, at that point, it's 2008. Elon Musk is sitting in a room, and for the 10 years before, Elon Musk has changed his persona almost completely. And at some point, I can promise you, he was picked up in some sort of young leadership, as some young leadership potential by probably Microsoft or people who were aligned with World Economic Forum and others, including International Visitors Leadership Program, which was a Nelson Rockefeller created and inspired.
So many of these things as well.
Organization, yeah. These, I think that in the 90s, they worked out, hey, we've got to do this really carefully. We've got to disconnect. The establishment is going to be hated. The actual establishment is going to be hated. They know it. They already knew they were hated, but they knew that if they were hated now, once the internet revolution and fifth generation warfare happens, they're going to be despised. So people like Microsoft's Bill Gates and the like, Bill Gates is going to go on and create infrastructure that detaches himself from that. They need to look like they're detached from the next generation. So I think personally, and this is just an opinion, that people like Musk and Thiel would have gone through young global leader style programs. Remember 1993, Bill Gates and Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Angela Merkel, loads of others, they're all going through the Global Leaders for Tomorrow program, which is the World Economic Forum's first global leader program. And then in 1996, 1997, Musk is going into Zip2Net. If you look on the Wayback Machine at his bio, then it says that he worked for Microsoft at one point as well, that he had been at Microsoft, which is something that isn't in the...
There's nothing better than deleting something. That means let's look deeper.
Yeah. So you know that there's a link there, and now there's claims that, you know, he was just doing coding for Bill Gates or the like. I don't think that's true. I think there's a hidden leadership program that was going on in the back. In some of the people who I've looked into who are part of the hidden technocracy, the Silicon Valley people who aren't mentioned, aren't talked about, the people like Curtis Yarvin, the famous Mencius Moberg, people like him, they went through Johns Hopkins programs. They were young leadership programs that were ideas that were like, these are the leaders for the future, and these are the...
So it's like two ways to look at this. Like, one is, okay, you have affluent, powerful organizations, families that then influence young leaders and then sway political and, like, say, corporate capital, like industry. This is like focusing on the problem in a certain way, right? Like, they're doing stuff, they're going to try and mess with us as much as possible. And there's another side of things of, like, how to circumvent. I'm very much about circumventing. It's like, and I believe you can technically circumvent this, because at the end of the day, I feel like we have more power with people, but people, obviously, the majority are not critical thinking. So it's also about sway. So I'm very curious how to mitigate this type of influence. So they use behavioral economics, manipulation to sway people's perspectives. It's easier not to manipulate. It's easier to be authentic, in my opinion. I don't know. Do you have any opinions on how you think maybe... how like put the spanner in the works? This is my favorite kind of question. It's like how to mess with their system, because it's a delicate system at the end of the day, right? It's like, it's covert for a reason, because people know about it, they'll change it. If people understood what power, and if they understood that they're working against their own interests, they would change things. So they have a delicate game they play.
Yes,
so,
delicate, indeed. Indeed, so delicate that if you say to most people, do you know what third way politics is, their eyes go cockeyed, and they lose all track of what's going on, because they haven't got a clue. Because really, the whole infrastructure they've built so that we don't understand and we don't see it around us. We see the old paradigm, we view everything through the old paradigm, and a new paradigm has already been created.
Changed, yeah.
So for me, my direction is trying to throw a spanner in the works by describing the hidden ideologies that are there. When I say hidden, it's with a bit of tongue in cheek, because it's kind of hidden from people, because people are so dumbed down by the education system that they're unable to see them even say these paradigms exist. These paradigms are so detached from their mental processes that why would you be interested in third way politics? It's just the Labour Party. The Labour Party has existed for 100 years, or it's just the Democrats. The Democrats have existed, blah, blah, blah.
You're lost at this point because you don't have critical thinking, because you just, like, told something, believe something.
So the spanner in the works is logic. The spanner in the works is teaching people how to recognize logical fallacy. That when they say, just because Biden bad does not make Trump good, that very basic sort of logical fallacy is everywhere. What opposes the bad is automatically the good is not so
stupid.
And but it's the main, that's their works. Their works is logic.
Exactly.
All of their cogs are logic. And I started really looking into this about 2017, 18. I was looking at Ben Shapiro and how he used logical fallacies. And it was funny, because it was Jordan B. Peterson who got me interested in examining logical fallacies closer and going and investigating.
They teach you while they use it.
But what they do is they teach you what they know, and the people who they're teaching it to, they don't use it themselves, because they don't need to, because they've got this person who uses it for them, and so they know they use that, so that's fine. I'll just let them tell me who to trust and who not to trust.
You're not learning, you're being told.
Not learning your logical fallacies. One of the main, and this comes up in policy documents throughout the 60s and 70s for the State Department in America. The same happened in Britain as well. I know this myself because I was probably I must have been about 5 or 6, and I'm sitting in class 2. Mrs. Moxon, I think her name was, is either Mrs. Moxon or Mrs. Walker, was it was telling us that they changed what they called the curriculum. And it was the first time, I was only very young, and they said that they would no longer be teaching us about Rome, Greece, and Stone Age Britain, and the Welsh origins of Stone Age during that period of Britain. But that instead, what they would be doing is teaching us about the kings and queens of England, so the people who rule us, and Welsh industrial history, so how we got ruled and how we fought for freedom and we won our freedom and now we're free. So, oh, look, the rulers of the past, now we're free. You don't get taught Greek and Roman philosophy. You don't get
Which is
taught...
dangerous, as people thinking.
Yeah. You don't get taught the foundations of critical thinking. I just get taught how to... Literally, the essence of the teaching itself is a logical fallacy. These are the rulers. They are interesting, and they are in the past, so that time is gone. So that no longer exists. Rulers don't exist anymore like that, because that was kings and queens. We don't have kings and queens.
It's the tactics. Yeah, with any kind of influence and power, oh my God, I'd just be subverting every single one of these tactics, I tell you, because it's I'm going to say it's hard, because the thing is they have reach. They're always going to have reach and power and influence, right? So they have channels. They're pushing out things to the media in real time. But at the end of the day, they're going to be pushing out stuff which is like a joke a lot of the time.
They're pushing out stuff which is right. What they're pushing out is stuff that connects with us and gives us a fallacy that we can live by. We are no longer ruled, we are free, we are independent, and at the same time we're ruled, we are not free, we have no independence, we're being pushed into this and that and the other. That's how the spanner in the works, giving people logic, giving people their logic back, allowing people to research Socrates, Marcus Aurelius. There's some really basic sort of principles that people could live by once upon a time to understand whether they were right and wrong about stuff. And most people, it's hard work. Most people choose not to do that, and instead
it's a combination of economics, unfortunately. So the economic angle of stuff is consciousness. So if your consciousness is captured by your economic situation, you focus on your economic situation.
100%.
It's like Maslow hierarchy of needs, right?
Yeah.
So
that's why behavioral economics works so well. That's why it was such a coup to find. Because, I had a message on a comment on YouTube I did the read through of the Musk Epstein, the Third Culture dossier article that I wrote recently. And that really, that looks into how Musk was trained by the father of behavioral economics, Richard Thaler himself, in an Epstein-funded course for Edge.
So the funding between Epstein, so who was his conduit? For me, it's like just a circuit board, right? It's like boop, 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 boop.
So what do you mean by who was Epstein? Because that's real...
His funders. Who's his funders? And it's two things. One is economic, right? And then it's ideological. So who are his ideological mentors and who is his financial backers?
That's a really interesting question. Now, there's loads of fallacies that are strung up within the understanding of who Epstein is as well, that exist. This is part of the reason why I was saying this in the first place. So someone else commented to me. I was saying what Epstein was, and they commented Les Wexner ? Because Les Wexner was officially meant to be his funding, and because Les Wexner was Jewish, everybody said, "Oh, that must mean Epstein is fully funded by the Mossad." That's obvious.
That's not how you make decisions.
No, I know. And it's purposely done like that. Les Wexner funded, a large part of Epstein's operation from about 1987 through to about 2009, 2010 was funded by Les Wexner officially. I think to allow the American security state to ignore accountability and responsibility for having a CIA operation running on American soil.
Makes sense completely.
And Les Wexner was central to organizing Jewish groups in America during a time when, they were infiltrating the intelligence infrastructure. And Les Wexner was funding programs at Harvard in amongst the people. And even the place where the World Economic Forum was based is like right next door to where used Wexner's own buildings in Harvard themselves. Wexner is got his finger in loads of different pies, and it's all across America. He's an all-American man. Wexner is a perfect example of an all-American man. He's just Jewish, and so everybody says, "Oh, he must be the Mossad." Then, now, here's where the fallacies are. If I say that that Epstein was CIA, and that my view of Epstein is he was CIA interlocutor who was in charge of, later on in the 90s onwards, was in charge of managing the heads of the potential future leaders of the Democrat Party.
When you say managing, meaning entrapping them?
No, handling them. They all knew what they were getting involved in. There's no entrapment with Bill Clinton. There was zero entrapment with Epstein.
So I mean they've earned their position rather than being entrapped.
Yeah. They were already chosen, not by Epstein, by others, and then put through Epstein. So Epstein was in communication. He visits the Bill Clinton White House 17 times. People think, what? He's like, he's going to bring in all of these different young girls and entrap Bill Clinton, who's all innocent. Again, it's a logical fallacy. If you believe Epstein's entrapping and blackmailing, you believe the other side is vulnerable, poor, victim. And this is the paradigm that has to be created. They create anybody who's been influenced by Epstein in any way into a victim. And this is really like all across the Epstein case that exists, that front exists. Epstein met Wexner in about 1987. In 1987, Wexner moves his operation to New York, and he mixes with all of these circles because he's getting involved properly with the New York elite at that point. He stays there he's in and out. He's mainly based in Ohio, and for about 5...
What is he doing in Ohio?
That's where he's from. So he's...
Oh, really? Okay, fine.
That's where most of his businesses is based. That's where the central hub is. Wexner is based out there. And he comes into this 1987. Maxwell and Epstein get together in about 88, 89. If you say to people, Epstein wasn't Mossad, they say, what about Maxwell and Wexner? Epstein was running intelligence operations and funding intelligence operations, provably from 1980 with Iran-Contra for the CIA. But he didn't meet Wexner or Maxwell for 7 to 9 years while he's working for the CIA through all that time. But suddenly he's Mossad because he's met these guys who are connected. The Maxwell family are connected with Yugoslavian intelligence, Czech intelligence, Canadian intelligence, German intelligence, French intelligence, Canadian intelligence, British intelligence, American intelligence. The Maxwells, Robert Maxwell especially, was a guy who played all sides constantly and died playing all sides. He was killed by the Mossad. He was killed by Israel. So the idea that
like how or why? Like, what was the reason?
He had embezzled a load of funds out of the Mirror newspaper to give to Israel, and then he didn't give it all to Israel. He spent a load, I think, but he gave a load, and then they had to try and hide it, and so he had run his usefulness. He had also been involved in so many different operations that if he's arrested and convicted on one side, a scared Robert Maxwell might do a little bit of talking. So he got the whole injection behind the ear, a bit of interrogation beforehand. It's believed he was taken off the boat, he was taken elsewhere, he was interrogated, and he was given a little shot behind the ear and made to look like he had fallen in the water. So he was offed by the Mossad. And Maxwell, all of the Maxwell family knew that. Listen, the Maxwell family involved in intelligence in computer infrastructure, in the technological infrastructure. They are invested in loads of companies that get in between the lines of intelligence so that they can pick up data. I mean, that's what the Promise software was partially to do with. It was about scraping masses of data.
This is the thing which I think is like you tell me, but like I can see it's just like many angles in for complete complete information awareness approach, right? Mm-hmm. So you have America or like basically like intelligence services or the military, different contractors are trying to achieve the same goal. And I think Israel is just basically complicit and part of the same system. You tell me if it's different. And then they horse trade technology. Like, it's interesting. Do you know much, or are you curious about like trading military technology from Israel to China? Have you heard much about these things?
I don't even listen. When I was yeah, there's a lot of noises I made there. When I was researching for One Nation Under Blackmail, a load of stuff come up. A load of stuff that'll probably come up. I'm sure Whitney's going to write a third book eventually. I don't know. I don't talk to her anymore, so we don't get it. We definitely don't get on. But I'm sure it's going to come up in those books. I was really interested. One of the things I was tasked to investigate for One Nation Under Blackmail was Bill Clinton's trips with Jeffrey Epstein in, was it 2002 or 2003? 2002, I think it is, where they go around Asia and they go around Africa on the Lolita Express at one point with Chris Tucker and Kevin Spacey, and that gets a little bit famous. But if you look at the other people who were flying on the plane during that period, really interesting people like Casey Wasserman and other people who have got long, interesting dealings with intelligence historically through family as well. And Casey Wasserman, who was on one of the African trips, his grandfather was Lou Wasserman, who was basically running Hollywood and the intelligence for Hollywood back in the early years.
When you say running intelligence for Hollywood, what do you mean? Like, in which function? Like, as in what to say, what the story is?
Like the top boy. That nothing went through. They were doing blackmail operations fairly early on. Intelligence operations. Most of the people who went into JFK's bedchamber, most of the women who went into his bedchamber, were linked with intelligence outfits somehow. Like Mariella Novotny is a good example of that, who got smuggled out of JFK's bedchamber in between the time he got voted in and inaugurated as president. And she got smuggled out by CIA and FBI, and her husband at the time was Hod Dibbin, who I've written a lot about. He was the devil himself. He created the original Man in the Mask sex parties.
Really?
Yeah. So it was like these people were. There was a lot of people like Tom Corbley and others who were helping to put these women in JFK's bedchamber because they knew that was his weakness, and then they knew they could.
You have a weakness like that, I tell you. Like, it's your.
Oh, I mean, sex though with beautiful women. I mean, that's
Marilyn Monroe. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh my God! Honestly,
if it wasn't her, it would be Audrey Hepburn. You know.
I saw this. I saw this clip of Some Like It Hot yesterday. Someone had posted it up, and she's singing, and they've made the shadow across the dress, and it almost looks like she's topless in it. The way it is, they've just like hidden her sexiness slightly with the shadow, and as she walks away, but she was potentially one of the most sexiest icons of cinema.
Yeah. She won.
I mean,
I think she won. Like, hey. She won. Like, I don't know if there's going to be another one. Like, yeah. You could pick out some other figures, but she
like Freddie Mercury's the best rock singer of all time.
Yeah, like, you know, some people
like,
will win.
Some people
it's achieved.
Yeah, and there's always been this influence operation, but a lot of people who were catching Jeffrey Epstein's plane during those trips were really interesting people, and they take a trip over to when they do the Asia trip, they go to China for a bit. It's really weird because it doesn't say that his Secret Service are with him anymore when he goes to China. It's like
for who?
They're not for Bill Clinton, because
really
In all of these Asian and African trips, his Secret Service are following him round on the plane with him,
So it has to be
etc.
documented effectively, officially.
Yeah, because it comes up in all the flight logs. And so I followed, like, for One Nation Under Blackmail, I was researching these logs and these flights one place to another. And then there's this flight over to China. Now, there's loads of rumors about the proliferation of certain technologies, potentially the most extreme forms of weapons technology that you can imagine. I think you can imagine what that is.
Which type, like weather warfare or laser or energy weapon?
Nuclear.
Nuclear.
There
Can't we
rumors.
kill ourselves like already?
I know.
Wait.
But there's a lot of rumors about the proliferation of those sort of type of weapons technologies. And then if you put that in context of history of the people that these people turn in the same circles as, there's been a history for the past 80 years of weapons technologies being these weapons technology, especially nuclear proliferation to different countries. So it's like China originally probably got given a help with nuclear technology by America via Kissinger and Nixon.
Yeah.
Love bombing them and giving them some sort of information, had already given them some sort of information for their nuclear capabilities to be possible so that they could be. In 1957, 1958, there's things like Kissinger's nuclear weapons and foreign policy is being produced, and the whole paradigm is shifting where they're saying, okay, now what we need is we've got a problem. We've got a binary paradigm where the Russians and the Americans have big nukes and we're all threatening each other. And they're just threatening each other. And to solve this, we want either one of two things. And the American, like people like John Foster Dulles and others, say it out loud. They say, what we need is for them to promise to use smaller nukes rather than bigger nukes. And if we can agree to use smaller nukes, then we'll stick on that instead of using bigger nukes. But they're using their big bomb, and
that's just military industrial complex bullshit.
Yeah. And so, but that was the theory behind it. The theory behind it was, hey, we get to do that. That was the first theory. And then that developed mutually by 1961, Herman Kahn was writing on thermonuclear war, mutually assured destruction, and the different ideas about it have already been mapped out. Kissinger was working in the Council on Foreign Relations, mapping out nuclear war games during the late 50s as well, while he's writing nuclear weapons and foreign policy. And Herman Kahn and Kissinger's work really come together in the early 60s, where they say, okay, we don't think that anybody's going to fire a nuke because nukes are so big. But the problem is, if we only have one against the other, if it's Russia against America constantly, eventually the worst possibility could happen. So what we need is for more countries in the world to have nuclear weapons. And they're not going to be able to have the missile technology to reach us, but they will threaten threaten this binary situation that's occurring. They will mean that if Russia potentially attacks America, they could be attacked by China and India and all of these other countries as well. So they're going to be, if we attack America, then we also got to attack India, and then we also got to attack, and then their working goes, okay, now it's mutually assured destruction for sure. It's not just the two countries against each other. It's like everybody's against each other. So you see China get the nukes, then you see India get the nukes, you see Pakistan going towards nukes, you see South Africa going towards nukes, and all of this time you can map out how there's proliferation of nuclear weapons is being manufactured by the American intelligence state. So Kissinger, at the same time as warning Pakistan against pursuing nuclear weapons, at the same time they're leaking secret technology to Pakistan. So he's saying one thing out loud and they're doing the other thing underneath. When Klaus Schwab leaves Kissinger's international seminar with Herman Kahn, like the father of nuclear theory, and John Kenneth Galbraith, to go back and set up the World Economic Forum, the first thing he does is go back to his father's old company that he created that was working on the Nazi nuclear program, and he helps the South African regime through that company gain nuclear weapons as well. So
Klaus Schwab's father, right? Or
yeah, Eugene Schwab. Klaus
Eugene
Schwab
Schwab.
himself,
Yeah.
though, in 1967, leaves Kissinger's international seminar and helps South African regime
Right.
get nuclear weapons by Escher Weiss proliferating. This came out in there was like a big Swiss hearing, an inquiry into the meddling of and the proliferation of nuclear weapons technology, and it showed that Escher Weiss during that period, whilst Klaus Schwab is reforming the company with Schulze and merging the company with Schulze, it is at the same time has just come from being with the father of nuclear theory, and Henry Kissinger himself have come across and has helped the South Africans to the apartheid regime, to get nuclear weapons technology. And so at the same time they say they're warning against nuclear technology being proliferated, they're proliferating
just say
nuclear
anything, doesn't
technology.
really matter. It's
So
about
what
action.
do you think that they would use someone like Epstein for if they could do the same thing? I mean, the fact is that the proliferating nuclear technology and weapons technology to all different countries around the world who they've agreed on getting these technologies is what they do. So I wouldn't be surprised.
But wasn't Epstein behind also some of the financial establishment of like the Gates Foundation and also the Clinton Foundation as well? So this is from the financial side of things. And then obviously you have the child blackmail. So it's like he's a multi-purpose tool. I don't know how to better describe. What do you think about this?
They've hidden the case behind a shroud of child sex
Yeah,
blackmail
exactly.
operation, and it's not that simple. It really is a party boat, situation where everybody gets on the party boat, but you can't get off the party boat because you compromise yourself. So they're not compromising anybody. People are compromising themselves. And the majority of people, if you actually research how this, how sexual, psychosexual, the sexuality of someone and how that mixes in with their own psychology and how that expresses with sexuality in general, you realize that the majority of people don't find children attractive. So the majority of people rightly find most children annoying. Women less so. But society is mainly controlled by men, and men mainly find other children, apart from their own children, until they reach teenage years, and then they're all annoying. They accept that they're annoying. Kids are annoying. They're not seen as potential mates. Only by a very small amount. And if they can find that small amount of people and they compromise them, that's one thing, that's fine.
Well, I think it's like a stepping stone thing. So it's like you go from drugs to sexuality, and then you drop the age incrementally, and you increase the drug dosage and the type of drug incrementally.
Well, in that
And you
case, then
record
RFK
everything.
Jr. sounds like he would be a potential for that sort of thing because he had a really bad drug addiction, a really bad sex addiction.
Did he? I didn't know.
Yeah. He went up to heroin in the 80s. He was on
Well,
it.
the thing is, I don't get it. Like, I've listened to his podcast and a few things, and I like his perspective on environment and health. But I, for the life of me, can't
50-50.
understand his perspective on basically he's like pro the destruction of Palestine, which is interesting. Yeah.
I don't believe him about nearly everything. I think he's one of the biggest. I think RFK Jr. is one of the biggest manipulators and liars in American political history.
So I can try and understand that a little bit. So like what elements of, so he's saying the things he needs to say, probably, right? And then like what gives you indication that he's doing that?
Okay. So first of all, my alarms are set off by the fact he lied about Epstein and his relationship with Epstein. He said he only caught the plane twice, Lolita Express twice. Once was he was given use of it to fly him alone somewhere, and then another time where he says he went fossil picking, and that's all he did. He went fossil hunting with Epstein and Maxwell. On the time that he was so-called fossil hunting, you can also find him at the same table as Epstein, a big guy ball in an elite establishment event during so you obviously can see already. Oh well, he did mention that bit. Okay, so that's just one thing. You got Juan Alessi, who ran the Palm Beach House of Hell, that was Epstein's, where a lot of the trafficking was going through, where there was 2 to 3 underage girls being brought to have sex with Jeffrey Epstein every single day. He was there regularly, apparently, during his sex addiction. While he's lying,
The sex addiction, you said this, so it's known.
yeah, it's known. It's known. He during this time, RFK Jr. is writing in his diary. He's rating his 37 extramarital affairs that he's had by sexual ratings. He's writing down his own.
What
He's
the
rating.
fuck? But like,
Yeah.
how is that public?
That's in multiple newspapers because his
Well,
diary is
why is it public?
public.
Though? It's curious, right?
Probably because his addiction means that he made lots of enemies, and one of the enemies he made was his ex-wife, who was very angry with the fact that she kept cheating on him all the time, and probably is a reason why a lot of this is public. And she's found hanging in a barn one day.
She did?
Oh yeah. Did she found she committed suicide, and then they buried her, and then they secretly dug up the body and buried her elsewhere in an unmarked grave. So
Right.
there's a little bit of an issue there. Now that's not even to go back to the start. You want to go back to the start, and you go back to. Where did he go to before he's doing all of his environmental lawyer stuff? Where did he learn how to be an environmental lawyer? Well, he went to Harvard during the 70s in the center of this bloody thing where everybody is all manipulating everybody. And he's a Kennedy. Some of the people who is at Harvard would have been involved in organizing his father's and uncle's killings, in my opinion.
Jesus Christ.
By 1974, 1975, he's being picked up by Roger Ailes, who goes on to, you remember, he's the guy who's caught masturbating in the loos in Fox News, and he's the head of Fox News and stuff. He's picked up by Roger Ailes in the mid-70s, and Roger, who's connected with the security, the Republican national security infrastructure, brings in this young troubled boy RFK Jr., gets him to take a year off at university, and goes round doing a falconry documentary with him, which I think is the moment where he was recruited by what we perceive as the other side. And I think a young RFK Jr. who lost his dad, who lost his uncle, who's seen all of that turmoil, people use, again, logical fallacy. People say to me, if I say RFK Jr. is dodgy, they say, are you kidding me? They killed his father and his uncle, so why would he possibly work for the other side? And the answer to that is, he would work for the other side because they killed his father and his uncle. Because if you've had the main members of your family killed publicly...
Father figure, right? So you lose your leadership, so you require leadership. And you're scared
about being shot in the head.
I don't think that's probably the reason why he does it. I think it's because he found authority, or... Because, like, someone that is drug addicted and sex addicted requires authority. Services is basically psychology full spectrum, right? So it's like, we know exactly what you need. You need father figure, so we give you that thing.
So they give him father figure. I think it lets him off accountability and responsibility a little bit to say that, they were manipulating him all the time and he doesn't know any better. I think he was a party boy and he didn't care about life, and his feeling was like a lot of people in this world, I could die at any moment, so why don't I just live life to the fullest? And that's kind of what he did afterwards. That's what we see afterwards. Now he's turning in certain circles, but he's an environmental lawyer after a certain amount of time, and he's an environmental lawyer after being put through an institution where really the Malthusians are also born or come from. Like the Club of Rome are linked with, of course, World Economic Forum and the others.
Same university?
That only exists because... Yeah, well, you put the idea that Klaus Schwab goes through Harvard, gets trained, gets given these mentors, goes back, creates the World Economic Forum. By 1973, the World Economic Forum keynote speeches by Aurelio Pecci is on the limits to growth and is on like the idea of reducing the problem with the enemy of humanity is man itself. So this is the sort of environment that's being created. Morris Strong is manipulating all of the environmental agenda. They identify in the late 60s, early 70s, they identify environmentalism as being the route to being able to reduce population. And then this little kid who gets molded by these extremely nasty people in this extremely nasty place goes on to be an environmental lawyer who constantly campaigns against the best form of energy, which is nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is the most reliable, efficient, and most powerful way to, and one of the safest to create, as long as you don't build it on an earthquake fault or something like I mean, that's or a place where a tsunami is going to hit.
Well,
but
generally these nuclear facilities need to be near water, which makes them a risk in general, which is like
does make them a risk, but safety profile, they are the least risk. They're least riskiest. They are the safest form of energy and the best and most efficient. And he spent years campaigning against that. Instead, he's campaigning.
In fairness, like the environmental movement has been brainwashed, like Greenpeace.
He's been part of it.
He's been part of it. I don't know.
He's part of the environmental movement brainwashing.
If he was the brainwasher, then like sure. I don't know necessarily, but I understand like there's been also geopolitical move to vilify this thing, especially in Europe. So like I was living in Germany, and they've completely like decoupled from nuclear energy, obviously because it destabilizes their energy base. But then that creates a stronger tie with Russia, and then we get like the Nord Stream pipeline 2, and then America's like, okay, we'll fuck with that as well.
The fact is that all of it comes down to the previous paradigm of nuclear technology shifting everything and changing all perspectives and defining how intelligence works to mess around with us. At the end of the day, RFK Jr. from very early on is troubled, is constantly adopted by these people who are evil, who are put through, who creates the environmental, like climate change agenda myth, is central to the Democrat elite. I mean, he's on the Clinton side for a lot of his time as a Democrat. He's pushing Hillary Clinton during elections and stuff as well, and he's looking like this partial antithesis.
He's part of the system. Like he's obviously in Washington, and like he was,
and he's hanging around with Epstein all through the 90s.
Really,
it's not just once or twice.
Is it his daughter or his son that is married to a ex-CIA?
Yeah. And who was his main campaign? One of his main campaign managers.
Yeah. Well, you can't fucking trust them at all, then, yeah.
No, listen, we're talking now.
That's handler shit, like right there.
Yeah, so we're talking about RFK Jr. here, and so far, everything that has been said has been, you would be suspicious if it was just one of those things.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's loads of those things. And it's pretty clear that from my own experience through it, I had personal experience around this, which I'm reticent to talk about still. But I mean, the fact is I had to, in the relationship, I had to say to someone, you're way too close to RFK Jr. And it broke up my relationship because I was already in a situation where I was being told I'm not allowed to say this about RFK Jr. or I'm not allowed to say that about RFK Jr. And I was like, fuck that for a laugh. Sorry about my language. But that's not what I've never been that person. I'm never going to be that person, especially not for someone who I think is deeply in bed with the national security apparatus so that he can save himself. Because I think that psychology of fear of seeing his father and his uncle have driven him to be into the arms of the security state, and they've opened up their arms. They sent the right person to handle him. 1,000,
if not 100 people that are just waiting. It's what's it called? It's an intelligence opportunity, effectively, right?
Yeah. And so what has he become since, especially since say 2009, 2010? What has Robert F. Kennedy Jr. become? But the manufactured antithesis of the status quo in many different regards. He was already groomed through university by a Republican. He's entered into a world where he's pushed out of the Democratic Party. Maybe it's a pretend contrived push, but I can't say that for sure. But he knows he's not going to get any power there anyway. And he's made to look like the evil antithesis. Like he creates children's health defense, and he's able to hide behind the good works of lots of other people. This is one thing I say as well. Lots of people will turn around and say, children's health defense do such a good job. Listen, an evil person can make a good organization, stock it with good people, and utilize the credibility of those people and their work to hide behind. So that the thing
is, like, for me, it's like his other point is like just trying to figure out stuff, right? It's like outside of enemy or friend, it's like what's going on. Well, that's how I think about this stuff. So it's like with him, what you're saying might be true. Like he might, on a personal and emotional and psychological level, believe he's trying to do the best that he can, but he also might be manipulated. Same the Joe Rogan side of things. I think he's a manipulated individual. So it's like they want the best, but they don't understand the complexities of intelligence services and psychology, which is immense and powerful, right? So they put in incredibly intelligent people to manipulate these guys. So you have a person that has an intention for good, but gets completely fucked. But like when you talk about like some of the darker stuff, like on the sex addiction and stuff like this, they know they've done bad stuff, right? Like,
and they're on the party boat. They're on the party boat, and they're on the party boat with the nastiest people, and they know if they leave the party boat, that will be used against them. So they know that. But with RFK Jr., it's almost like it is water off a duck's back. Everybody knows that he was a sex addict. Everybody knows he was a drug addict, and no one really cares. It can be used against him in press and media to make him look like the evil antithesis as well. But it's all water off a duck's back. He doesn't really care about it. As a man, I can tell you, if someone goes around talking about how many people you had sex with, then it's like, oh, well, I was quite successful in the mating terms. Are you jealous? Or boo-hoo-hoo-hoo. That's what a lot of people are going to be feeling like. It's just like they're going to be like, I don't care what he does in his sex life. I noticed this a lot when I lived in France. If you, in Britain or America, if you had a sex scandal, it would bring down that person. That person would have to leave political office or their business or whatever. In France, if someone got caught with a sex scandal, it's like, roll of the eyes. Don't tell me about someone's sex life. That's it. It's over. They're not interested.
Oh, my phone is dead again.
Oh, I got you back.
Sorry, my phone was the internet. This is what the issue is about.
Right. Okay. Well, that's the way it works. But yeah, I don't think anybody really cares. That's it. I just don't think people care about people's sex life. I don't think people care about whether or not someone slept with someone, whether or not someone's been addicted to drugs. I've lost you again, I think. I got you back now.
I'm sorry about this. It's the most unprofessional interview ever because my phone and my internet is dying. I actually have to go. I have to pick up my daughter, but maybe we can sum it up. But it's a super good chat. I really enjoyed.
I think I've lost you. And then he returns again.
Sorry, man. Sorry.
That's all right. It's going to be you who has to edit these bits out. So.
I know. It's terrible, right? It's not easy.
Yeah, hard life. It's a hard knock life.
I have green screen already to fix, so it's going to be fine.
Huh? Yeah. I'll be fine. Oh, it comes down to the fact that no one really cares about someone's sex life, really. This is the old world.
It used to be 1950s.
Yeah. And there's still the old paradigms get put upon us now, and people act like that's real and what people are responding to, but it's not. People are responding to other things. The clincher after all of those, I mean, I can say all of those things about RFK Jr. The clincher for me was the Zionist.
For sure, same Zionism. With me. I was like, 100%. This is your position. Everything else is same with Trump. It's like all these people, like they're just puppets. Like
Yeah.
the Zionist
They-
agenda is a really good indicator of a person's position.
They're not, let me get this straight though, they're not puppets for an Israeli state. They're puppets for the paradigm that created the Israeli state. They're a puppet for the fact that they can hide behind the unaccountability and irresponsibility of the Israeli state and their actions.
Well,
Israel can do anything and they can just like say, oh, that was Israel who did that. But this is what this
the
is
thing is,
really.
this is not about national state. This is obviously about like global governance, right? So like Israel is a proxy for global governance,
Yes.
obviously established for this purpose, right? So
Yeah.
it's like these pawns we talk about, Mossad and this, it's just like proxies for control, right?
Yeah.
So
So when people try and paint Epstein as only Mossad, that's when you miss out the fact that this is a globalist international security blob. It's a big grey globalist intelligence blob, I call it, which is just like every single part of it. It works to help the other part. The MI6 are in bed with CIA, or in bed with
they're all
Mossad, in bed
tools.
with
I see
Canadian.
these as hands and legs of not even like intelligence services. I know they do the dirty work, but it's basically old families vying for complete control, right?
Yeah. And it doesn't. Maybe 10% of it will be Jewish right now. Maybe
Like, the thing
10%.
is, it doesn't matter though. Culturally, sure, there's some things there that are dodgy that we can look into. It's not the fucking point. The point is, it's basically people that have no, like, you can do the satanic stuff or you could do the old family stuff, which is like complete control. Complete control allows you to do stuff, allows you to do anything actually, and that's the end goal, right? Generational. That's why it's generational. Old family.
Yeah.
Corporation seems not quite right, right? Corporation's a tool.
Yeah. All of the people are pointing at the tools nearly all of the time, and right, you gotta understand. I come from a part of the media which is, of course, obsessed, probably rightly so, obsessed about the Epstein case. But they've been given this pill to swallow, which says that it's all one person, and the person or one entity is all Israel, and that entity, in reality, is unaccountable for nearly. It's a void of accountability. Israel is just like, if it's Israel, then no one can do anything about it, and then it allows all of these other intelligence services who were heavily involved now to get away with what they do. One thing I will say is that Epstein did not care who he worked for as long as the CIA wanted him to work with them. And the CIA wanted to bring in people like Ehud Barak, and they wanted to bring in people like Prince Andrew, because these people were working with the arms industry for their relative country's intelligence apparatus.
Yeah. Just reflecting. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, I know. It's a difficult. It's a whole difficult situation, and it's really frustrating because the narrative is everything. The paradigm will only shift. It's like within the Epstein case. It's like the problem with who the victims really are. The majority of people who have. Who in reality were going out every day grooming 15-year-old girls and bringing them in to have to be raped by Jeffrey Epstein. Those people have been also painted as victims too, a load of them. So it's like everybody's a victim of Epstein and Maxwell at the end of it. So Epstein and Maxwell were Mossad. So everybody's a victim of Mossad at the end of it. It's not. People are a victim in America. They're a victim of CIA working with outside intelligence assets to undermine the security and safety of their own population. That includes loads of the girls, the people who groomed young girls and forced them into a room with Epstein, knowing what would happen, were guilty for their actions and instead have been given big payouts.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's like this abuse is like absolutely fucking terrible. What can we do? That's the whole point with me. I'm constructive. I'm like, I want to solve things, but Okay, Johnny, I think probably need to call a close to the interview, which is always amazing. But really enjoy these chats. We should do this more, I feel. I don't know what you think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I'd love to. I want to do, to be perfectly honest, I want to do more like mixed live shows as well. I need to, because of the way censorship works, I need to be constantly out there doing stuff. So I'm happy to talk at any time.
We can do a live chat or God knows what. I feel like we have a lot of commonality in what we talk about, so it'd be good.
Yeah. Most definitely, and I appreciate the fact that you can not only talk about these things, but you can also oppose things without crying about it. And yeah, maybe I'm unoffendable. Oh no, you could say a couple of things that would really get my goat, but I just argue with you until we come to some sort of resolution, and that's the way life should be, and that's the way things should be. So I
Yeah,
appreciate the
argument is
conversation.
good, but it's not
Yeah.
about being. We'll end it there. And do you want to share like your links or the places where people can find you? And then
Yeah, if you want to, I'm really interactive. I tell people all the time, like, I'm really interactive. I am pretty busy, like, around the place, so it might take me a little bit of time to interact. But, like, I'm on Twitter at Johnny Vedmore. I'm on Newspaste, at the top of newspaste.com. You can find a load of things like Linktree and stuff, ways to support me. The Linktree will give you all of the different channels I've got out there. And I have such a large amount of work now, and I try and make my work so that it is timeless to an extent that in the future it will be as important as it is while we're discussing it, because history repeats itself and you can always learn something from history. So a lot of my work is history. So please come get involved. DM me if you want and email me if you want, and I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody and happy to hear other alternative views. If you think that I'm wrong about something and you have information that makes you say, oh, well, I can prove this, I'll be happy to see it. I will analyze that information properly, but I am always happy to interact with people. And thanks for having me on.